The ship of Theseus is a famous thought experiment in Western philosophy, and it has its origin in Greek legend. So imagine this very large wooden ship made of wooden planks, and the people of Athens want to preserve it. So they continually, year after year, keep replacing the planks as they deteriorate and rot. And this goes on for many years. And then it becomes this real example for philosophers asking the question, is the ship that's remade of all new wooden planks still the same ship? Right? So this is a classic philosophical paradox. Although a Buddhist would have a definite answer for this. And there are many variations on this theme. There's one I thought was very appropriate for Sravasti Abbey. That is of socks. So when we have our favorite pair of socks, they wear out, and we put a patch on them. And then we put another patch, and another patch. And when the sock is all patches, is it the same sock? So I've been reflecting a lot on the impermanence of the body during this retreat, and I'm coming up with the same kinds of questions. And I am just as confused as the philosophers, more confused. I have this question like, how is it that I conceive of my body as one thing when there has been change, both obvious and imperceptible, since conception? The answer is ignorance. So Geshe Topke was encouraging us to look at impermanence as the first of the three characteristics. So he said this back in January. And then Venerable Kadro gave a BBC on looking at causal dependence and took the example of the human body. And so both of these really influenced and inspired my practice. So I wanted to investigate more about what are the causes of the human body. So of course, science has an answer, and so does the entry into the Womb Sutra. And so I went there, and it describes in great detail various causes and conditions necessary to obtain a body. But there was one in particular that really caught my attention. So it talks of these two erroneous thoughts. So one of the thoughts is actually two, which is you have attachment and anger towards your parents, who you're about to go into the womb because of. The other erroneous thought is you think, this is my fluid, pertaining to either the sperm or the egg, depending on your gender. And I thought, whoa, that's exactly how it happens, because that's exactly how we obtain everything in our life. We say, that's mine, I'm taking it. Which is what Venerable Chodron was speaking about in the Shantideva teaching. We acquire things that are not our body, and they become our body. So the other cause of the body, the other material cause, besides the sperm and the egg, is of course the food and drink. And so I did a little research on the digestion, the system of digestion, which I won't explain right now because we're about to eat. But I will say that it's been a really interesting thing to do, which is to think about, okay, we have the food on the serving table right now. We may consider it mine in a general way, like it's the Sangha's or it's the community's food, but we don't consider it mine individually yet. But we put it into our bowl, and it's mine. We put it into our mouth. Some people say it's mine. Some people might consider it me. But I think after you swallow it, it's definitely me. Unless it comes back out. And then on the other end, which I also will not explain, when it comes out of the various orifices in a variety of forms, we very quickly say, that's not mine. It might be mine until you throw the tissue away, but we really want to get rid of it. So those are the causes of the body. Now, looking at the result of the body, the Satipatthana Sutra goes into great detail on the stages of decomposition. So I won't go into that now. But I really was curious. Okay, so we talk about the causes and we talk about the result. What happens in the middle? And so I wanted to think about what happens from conception until decomposition, disintegration. And I remembered I read the Victory Sutra and its commentary, which is in the Pali Canon. And the Buddha creates this mind-made woman to prove to Nanda that the beauty in physical form doesn't last. And so the commentary says this: the Blessed One then displayed the woman as one who had never given birth, as one who had given birth once, as a middle-aged woman, as an old woman. He then showed her getting older until she was 100 years old, bent over, leaning on a walking stick, with pock-marked limbs. While Nanda was still looking on, he showed the woman die, and her body bloated and in various stages of decay, surrounded by crows and other scavengers, being devoured, foul-smelling, disgusting, and repulsive. Having seen this sequence of decay, Nanda thought, this sequence is common to all, to me as well as to others. The perception of impermanence sprang up in her, and in conformity with it, the perceptions of suffering and non-self arose. The three kinds of existence then appeared to her as like a blazing house, not offering any refuge. So I did a similar exercise, mainly during the full retreat, part of the retreat. And I was looking at the various stages. So looking at the zygote, the embryo, the fetus, the baby, the toddler, child, preteen, teenager, young adult, adult, mature adult, elderly person, on the deathbed, a corpse, and then bones. And I did this in a variety of ways. Sometimes I took a day, and I was born in the morning and I died in the evening. Sometimes I was born and died in an hour and 15 minutes. Sometimes I brought in many beings, and they were born and died in an hour and 15 minutes. Sometimes I looked at multiple lifetimes, so seeing what happens after the consciousness leaves the body. And it was really interesting as I kind of went through this process, this continuum in various speeds, seeing that at different speeds it had a different impact on my mind. And when I was looking at various beings, especially loved ones, it really became horrible, repulsive. It's like, how can this be happening? But when it's really slow, like in daily life, it seems, oh, this is fine. This is great, no problem. So that was a really interesting thing to look at. And I had these questions like, has this body changed or is it static? Is my present body the same as my baby body? My teenage body? 20-year-old body? 30-year-old? 35-year-old? 36-year-old? Then it gets really vague, right? Especially yesterday's body. And is it one thing or many things? Does this present body become the old body? And does this present body cease? So there's a quote from the Sutra on Chanting the Dharma Together that says, "This body does not come from the past, nor transmigrate into the future, nor continue to exist from the past into the future. And so it can be really easy to just look at this as this intellectual exercise. But I really wanted to understand what Shantideva's argument is in Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life in these verses in chapter 8. These two verses read, "Since the pain of others does no harm to me, I do not shield myself from it." And so the response to that is, "So why to guard against my future pain, which does no harm to this my present me? To think that I will have to bear it is in fact a false idea, for that which dies is one thing, what is born is something else." So I was really trying to link that with the reflections I was doing on impermanence. And in Shantideva's training anthology, he actually goes into this argument in more detail in the chapter called Enhancing Goodness. And so that reads, "When someone has died and gone into the womb, a distinct child is born. When the child has ceased, there is adolescence. The young adult comes to destroy that. The old person arrives when that ceases. How is there thought to be one body? And thus, in each moment, there is another body, as with hair, nails, and so on." So I know I have a 5 o'clock shadow way before 5 o'clock. That's evidence. So we protect all the various parts of our continuum. So why not protect others? So the parts of the continuum and the parts of a group, like the group of sentient beings, are both conventionally designated. So Venerable has said, recalling some of what her teachers have said, was that if aging happened overnight, we would be shocked and horrified and overwhelmed. So that's exactly what happened in a famous movie. You might guess. Big, with Tom Hanks. Oh, people are shaking their head like they haven't seen it. Some people have seen it. Okay, so this was a movie where a 12-year-old boy is at a carnival and isn't tall enough to ride on the ride. So he makes this wish to this fortune teller machine to be big. And the wish comes true. And the next morning, he wakes up with his 12-year-old mind in a 30-year-old body. And you can imagine the problems that creates. First of all, his mother flips out and thinks someone's kidnapped her son. And then it goes on from there. So not to digress too much, but that wasn't a digression. That was very related. I was in the musical Big, which was less well-known than the movie Big. So I don't think any of you know the songs. So that's good. It won't pollute your retreat. But there was a song sang by the mother that I thought was really poignant and really shows the suffering that results when we grasp at permanence. So she sings, but I will not sing. 2 months old, he looks up at you. How his smile melts your heart. And you want to say, stop time, don't move on. Even as you watch, that look is gone. Then he's too, such a little man, so alive and so smart. Again you say, stop time, stay just this way. But the future comes and he can't stay. Nobody warns you of this parent's paradox. You want your child to change and grow, but when he does, another child you've just begun to know leaves forever. Birthdays fly, 7, 8, 9, 10. Every kid he becomes, you clutch and say, stop time. Hold this one fast. But it's not supposed to last. And that time has come and passed, and he's growing, and he has to go. So we know this on an intellectual level, but I know for myself, I don't know it on a gut level. So when I was preparing for this talk, another childhood memory came up, which was the children's book, Love You Forever, which tells the story of a mother singing a lullaby to her child as he grows up, as he becomes an adult. She even sneaks into his house and keeps reciting it to him. People thought that was a little creepy. And then the son sings the same lullaby to his aging and dying mother. He actually finishes her words. And I went to the author's website, and he tells the origin of this book. He says, "Love You Forever started as a song. I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." He says, "I made that up after my wife and I had 2 babies born dead." The song was my song to my dead babies. So I wanted to share that because it really brings us back to our situation in samsara. And it reminds me that the thought, it shouldn't be that way, that's not aligned with reality. And it brings only suffering. So popular culture celebrates the cycle of life, right? Especially birth, and also birthdays up to a certain point. But the Buddha does not celebrate the cycle of life. So I want to quote from the Buddha going back to the Descent into the Womb Sutra, where he says, "The moment the 5 aggregates of name and form are reborn, suffering is experienced. If I do not praise this moment, how could I even consider praising a circling among existence over a long period of time? If even a little filth stinks, how much more so does a lot of filth? Therefore, who would desire and be attached to the 5 appropriated aggregates of the body of the embryo?" So reflecting on impermanence is so much more than a philosophical puzzle. It is such powerful medicine for our distorted thinking, the thought of permanence. And so I know for myself, it's going to take way more repetition than I could do in this short retreat. It's going to take over and over, just keep reflecting on what it means to be impermanent. So may we all really have the courage and fortitude to hear the teachings on impermanence and to repeatedly meditate on them. And may this effort really progress us all the way to full awakening for the benefit of all beings.